Today I'm going to run through the top 3 tips that I would give to any new player or newish player, because I feel like with Dungeons and Dragons you could have been playing for a couple of years and still feel like a bit of a beginner. And if you stay to the end, there is a bonus 4th tip which is going to not only help you become a better player much faster, but it's also going to make sure that you as an individual are absolutely loved by the rest of your table. Tip number 1, embrace the unknown. Sounds mysterious. What I'm really trying to get at is you need to accept the fact that you're not going to know how half of anything works before you start, and that's okay. There is a lot of information on your character sheet, and there is even more in the player's handbook. And if you worry about how much you learn or know before you start the game, you will never start the game. You don't have to know half the rules in order to begin playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it is very unlikely that you will ever know all of the rules, because a lot of them will never come up, or a lot of them just won't apply to you, and that's okay. The most important thing is that you just start. And this applies to D&D, but it applies to anything. The first time you walk into a gym, you're not going to know how half the machine works. You're not going to know how to do some of the exercises. That's fine. That's not an excuse or a reason not to start. In fact, the opposite. Because I think almost all of us learn much quicker by doing it. So you need to start. You need to have a basic understanding of the rules, and usually your games master and other players will have an initial session, like a session 0, and talk you through the basic mechanics. But you don't need to know everything. And what will tend to happen is there will be moments where you're not 100% sure how your character ability works, or how your spell works, or how a certain mechanic works, and you and the games master will work it out together. And then you will know how to do it for future reference, but you don't need to know how to do everything in order to start. So embrace the fact that you're not going to know what everything on your character sheet does. Embrace the fact that there's no way you can possibly read and memorize everything in the player's handbook, and just get going. Tip number 2, engage with other players. This is quite a tricky one for some of us, because I think our initial experience of role-playing games comes from consoles and PC. And so we might have played things like The Witcher or Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, Dark Souls, even something like Baldur's Gate before. And our idea of a role-playing game is more of a single-player experience. But Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop games are different because you are not the main character. I'm going to repeat that just quickly. You are not the main character. You are simply a person that exists in this world, and you are functioning as part of a team. And so the sooner you start engaging with other players around the table, or on Zoom if you're playing online, the better. Now, you can be a passive player. You can sit back and you can wait for your turn in combat, and then you can decide what your actions are going to be and where you're going to move and who you're going to attack, and then you finish your turn, and then you just wait for the clock to run past until it's your turn again. And you can do the same with social encounters. You can wait until the games master or someone puts you on the spot and then asks you what you're going to do. But you are going to have a far more enjoyable experience if you get into the habit of actively engaging with other players or other characters around the table. And the main reason for this is quite selfish. If you take the time to shine the spotlight on others, it will be reciprocated and they will shine it back on you. So if you want other characters to take an interest in your character, the first thing you need to do is take an interest in theirs. And I think this probably works with humans in real life as well, but that's another topic entirely. So get into the habit of engaging with other players, because if you're the person who does that around the table, then you are going to be liked by all of the players. Your character is much more likely to be liked by other characters, and everyone's going to have a far more enjoyable time because it's going to feel like a social experience. If you are all just sitting back and waiting for your turn, it will feel like you're playing a very slow, boring, single-player game, and that's not the point at all. Tip number 3, be enthusiastic. Some people can feel enthusiastic but not display it, and to those individuals I say that's not good enough. You should be enthusiastic to play Dungeons & Dragons because you should be enthusiastic to do any of your hobbies or any of your games. This isn't work. You're not being paid to show up. You don't have to show up. You get to show up. And chances are everyone else around the table has set out that time in their diaries away from their friends, their family, their other social engagements, work, other hobbies, so that they can play Dungeons and Dragons with you. And so you should be enthusiastic because you're choosing to be there. This is meant to be a fun experience. And whilst you're playing, try not to become distracted, try not to become sullen, try to be enthusiastic. And this ties in with everything we're talking about. If you don't know half the rules, you can still be enthusiastic to play, and that matters far more. If you're not confident with engaging with other players, but you show up enthusiastic and you try your best, that matters so much more than how you end up doing it. Being enthusiastic about anything is honestly a superpower. So, unless you're having a really shit day, unless you're having a really tough time, I just encourage you to be enthusiastic, to be a bit of a keynote, because everyone else is going to feed off that energy and it's going to be a way, way better experience. My fourth and final tip, it's not just for new players, but all players, and that is do something between sessions. Try not to be the player who closes the lid off their laptop or goes home that day after the session's finished and just puts everything away and doesn't pick it up until the start of the next session. Try to be active and engaged between sessions. And it doesn't necessarily always have to look like the same thing. Think of it this way. If you are new to the game, if you're new to anything and you only do it once a week, your learning curve is going to be far, far slower, or your the learning process is going to take far, far longer. If you're learning a new skill, if you're learning how to play guitar, if you're learning a language, if you're learning how to do a certain exercise, and you do it once a week, it's going to take you far longer than someone who engages with that new skill on a more frequent basis. So selfishly, if you want to get better at the game, then you need to be actively engaging with it outside of those sessions. Also, don't be the person who has something to do between sessions. Let's say you've leveled up, you've learned a new skill, you've got new equipment, you've got different HP, you've changed your character sheet a little bit. Don't be the person who shows up to the session and at the start of the session start doing all of that. Because if everyone else is ready to go and they've sorted that out before the session started, it can feel a little bit disrespectful of other people's time, and it's just going to slow the process down, and it's not going to put you in everyone's good books. So be active in between sessions. You can also use the time between sessions to clear up any points of confusion. If there is a ruling that you're not quite sure about, if something happened in the game with another player and you didn't really understand why it happened or how it happened, then go away and look it up. Talk to your games master, talk to other players, go on social media, go on YouTube, watch this channel, subscribe to it obviously. Look through the player's handbook, find the answer so that next time that happens, you know what the answer is, you know what the mechanics are. And if you really don't want to do anything D&D related between sessions, if you don't want to do any prep, if you don't want to do any research, then just engage with the other players. Just keep the social aspect going because it's so important and it's really the reason why you're probably playing D&D in the first place. And so if you don't engage with the other players for a whole week and you just show up to play Dungeons and Dragons, then A, that's up to you. But B, personally, I think you're missing out on the major reasons as to why you be playing this in the first place. So the fourth tip I have for you is, like I said, do something between sessions. If you want to be a better player, then you need to go away and you need to prep and you need to look up answers and you need to come ready to go. If you want to be a more light player, then engage with other players. And if you want to get the most you possibly can out of this experience, then make sure you don't just go ghost for 6 or 7 days before your next session and then just show up for a couple of hours to play that game. There's 4 tips. Don't forget, if you like this video, then leave a like, I guess, and subscribe to this channel.